It's time for the Unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the Unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Carey Murdoch and Josh McCuistion. Eddie Radisovich.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is time for another edition of the Unofficial 40, and we want to welcome in Josh McCuistion for this podcast. We had a team podcast last week. Now we're back to our official recruiting podcast, joined as well by Eddie Radisovich, Joe Duvall. Guys in the studio. Hello, guys.
Hello. Hello, good to be here.
And Josh McCuistion is joining us from Studio B, Josh. Get it right this time. It's our big-time Studio B that you're joining us from.
I can't believe we rented this space. It's amazing that this thing is within the Sooner Scoop, budget.
Okay.
The RV is next. The mobile unit.
I'm going to make that happen. We're going to Kansas City this weekend. I hate to tell you this, guys, but like one of the premier RV places is in Kansas City. We could go by and look.
Get one for the way back.
Need to hit the lottery before we head up there.
I think Mega Millions. Did somebody win last night?
I don't know.
It was
if
up
they
to
haven't,
like
we got to get
150.
some. If nobody did, we need to get some tickets. Wouldn't the next drawing be Saturday night?
I think Mega Millions is on Fridays.
Oh, it is. Okay.
I think that a drawing. I think it's Tuesdays and Fridays. I can't believe it's even Wednesday. So, the day that we're doing this podcast. Josh, are you a lottery guy? You ever play? Did you play when the Powerball got to like $1 billion?
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny, and you always hear people talk about this. Like, I don't know why 80 million isn't enough motivation for me. Like, that's not enough. That's not going to do. But if it'll go over like 400, then I'm in. So, I don't really know. And I think everybody's like that, but I don't really know why 80 million isn't enough for us. I mean, I know we're really living large at Soonerscoop.com, but, I guess that's just going to take me into a different tax bracket that I'm not that interested in going into.
By the way, guys, you're sleeping in the car this weekend, so just so you know.
I'm used to it.
You have slept in the car before, haven't you?
I have a long history of sleeping in cars. I used to sleep in a car in high school, go out, get drunk, and just never go home, and then sleep in my buddy's van.
Walmart parking lot. That happened to me once.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I've literally slept. We went to Kansas State one year. I did. This was pre-Sooner Scoop days. This is back when I was working for First Down Publications. They were cheap bastards. And I didn't really do a good job of setting my hotel, and I couldn't find a hotel between here and Manhattan. So I just went into a Walmart and bought a pillow and an alarm clock, and I slept in the Walmart parking lot. I got up the next day and I covered OU Kansas State. I think that was Josh Freeman year there. I think that was what's his name? The disaster coach, Ron Prince.
Oh, Ron Prince.
They were up 49-0.
Now, I was thinking this story was like predating, I thought you had like a flip phone in your car.
I didn't know.
The
I didn't have a
Hotels
cell
app
phone
had
then.
to be in existence when Josh Freeman was on the football field. So
Okay, so no.
that feels like that's on
I
you.
think that's 2008 that year.
No, it was way before then. It was like 03, 02, something like that.
So that's like L. Roberson days or something?
I was so tired. I can't remember who was playing in that game.
Are you sure it was even Kansas State? It
I
could
know
have
there was a
been-
lot of purple, so I can tell you, yes, it was Kansas State. So anyway, but yeah, we're going up to Kansas City again this weekend, the Rivals camp. Josh, I know you've got some possible news out there. I don't know if you wanted to share that yet, or anything that you want to just break down about who we're going to be looking at this weekend in Kansas City.
Yeah, well, I think the guy that, all four of us were most excited to get a chance to look at was Bray Walker from Southmore, Oklahoma's 2018 commitment. I know is already a Rivals 100 member for 2018, a guy that's probably the state's most legitimate five-star possibility in close to a decade, I guess over a decade, since the last one when Gerald McCoy was in 2006. So he had made plans to come, found out earlier this week he's actually not going to be able to make it. So, that's a little bit of a disappointment, but there is a lot of Oklahoma talent that should be there. Guys like C.J. Moore, Levi Draper, who we all saw in Dallas, but I know he he was very open with how poor he felt like he did in Dallas. And so I think what he's going to do is try and go up there. He wants to get that 5-star challenge invitation, and he knows based on what happened in Dallas that's not going to happen. So he's trying to go to Kansas City and kind of show, just put on a better show. He was a little sick from everything I understand in Dallas. Eddie and I have seen him in person. What I saw in Dallas does not match up with the kid that I know and that I see on tape. So I do buy the sickness thing, and I'm really interested to see how he kind of matches up. And then you move on to a lot of younger 2018 guys. CJ Moore from Tulsa Union is a guy that's expected to be there. A guy that I really like that I think is not getting any attention so far is Israel Antwine from OKC Millwood, and he'll be there. He's a 2018 DN guy, really fits what Oklahoma wants to do up front, very natural, kind of playing that 4-tech. So he's another one of those guys. And then when you look around, at how much Oklahoma's going to recruit places like Arkansas, Kansas City, Missouri, even, you get a lot of guys also at this camp from like Georgia. It's Rivals' last camp. So you get a lot of kind of outliers, guys that wouldn't normally show up at a camp in Kansas City do for this event. So I think we'll see some interesting guys, and there should be plenty of names for us to talk about.
Do you remember Israel Antwine when we went out and saw him at Millwood, Carey? I think he was in 8th grade at the time. I remember taking a picture of him, though, and I think that it's the picture that we still have up for his Rivals profile.
Okay.
He was an 8th grader, though, and we went out there, and it was like, oh, God, who's that? Is he a junior? And I remember the coach. He was like, no, he's an 8th grader.
He was. I'm trying to be nice as a fellow fat guy, but he was like wearing a T-shirt, and everybody else had like on a jersey, and he was marshmallowy.
Yeah, and I saw him at the Oklahoma City preview, though, and he definitely has lengthened out. He's kind of started to grow into his body a little bit,
okay.
And he's definitely an interesting guy that I want to see. And then obviously Levi Draper is going to be somebody that I was surprised how bad he was at Rivals Dallas, but I remember saying how sick he was.
I hope he doesn't expect any more wonderful Ralph Lauren pictures from me.
We'll just need the lighting right. That was one of the better pictures.
I mean, he's got some great hair, so I bet you he can.
Has he cut the hair recently? Anybody know?
To my knowledge, no. I think the hair
not.
is still going. So, that's but yeah, I do want to say for everybody that's extra excited about my Israel Antwine tease, I think Carey's definition of marshmallowy should get everyone really jacked up to see what that kid's about.
Well, he was in the 8th grade. I mean,
it was like 3 years ago.
Give him a break. Yeah, who was the kid that was that transferred to Florida that was there then?
That he was committed to Kansas State.
And and he's actually at an Arizona JUCO now. He's been all over the country. Man, what's that guy's name? I can see his face. That's really bad.
Oh well. You suck, Josh.
Yeah, I know. I'm yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this. Okay, Levi Draper. We all know he didn't have a good showing down in Dallas, but you guys have both seen him in person. I haven't. I'm just curious. Can you make the Austin Box comparison with him? I mean, his team's best player leads his team to a state championship, makes plays for them on offense as well.
That works for him. I mean, and if you put it that way, I think it works. Eddie and I saw him in their state title game against Altus, and he's just long and rangy and fast. And I felt like Box was more of a physical presence. I mean, even though he played quarterback and everything for Enid when he was there, he was still pretty.
He would kill you, though.
Yeah, he would run you over through you.
Was it Cooper, the receiver, that he beheaded in the game, going over the middle, in I think the state semifinal when he's playing for Mustang?
It might have been. I kind of remember that play, though.
I actually, Austin and I played Little League together, and we played baseball against each other in high school, and he played for Enid.
Yeah.
He came to Norman North. He actually dropped a fly ball in center field that ended up costing them the game, and he punched a hole in our shed when he came right through. I mean,
that sounds about right.
A metal shed?
Oh, I wish. That would be even more impressive. But it was like a wooden shed. It was almost like Shredder or something from the Ninja Turtles, just rah. I mean, that's a guy that he was playing center field and punching holes in walls. That's the kind of guy Box was. And Draper, Levi's that kind of an athlete, but I don't think he has that strength that Austin had.
Well, and just I mean, I know we'll be out there looking at Levo. Anybody else that you're excited about seeing, Josh, that you've heard of? I know we don't have a full list yet of guys that of the roster that's going to be in Kansas City.
Well, and that's kind of the thing is I've got some guys that I think were coming, but like I said, with the Bray Walker news, and then earlier today, a guy that I know Joe and I both really like is Adrian Wilson, the slot receiver from Tulsa Union. He's not going to go, so that's kind of I'm a little leery to be like, oh yeah, man, I'm excited to see that guy, and then get all our fans all excited about it, and then have to tell them Sunday, yeah, he didn't actually show up in Kansas City. So I'm a little hesitant about that, and that happens with camps. But like I said, I think you're going to see plenty of guys. A guy that I'm hoping is going to be there, and I really need to check the list, is Akil Byers, the defensive lineman from Arkansas. I think he's going to be there, but I'm not 100% about that. And, he's one of Oklahoma's top targets at that position. He's a guy that I think, if I'm not mistaken, Calvin Thibodeau is seeing today or tomorrow. So, I mean, there's going to be, it's kind of a timely thing. We can talk to him, see how that, how that went as far as, what you can really do when a coach visits campus. But I think Oklahoma is really pushing for him. And, I mentioned it in some of our notes earlier this week. From what I've gathered, he's got OU, Alabama, and Florida State in his top three. So, he's one of those guys that I think everybody kind of wants. And if he can clear up his grade stuff, he'd be a huge get for Oklahoma.
So, Josh, people aren't really used to guys from Arkansas, the top player in Arkansas, coming out without an Arkansas offer and to be expected to go to the Razorbacks. So I think maybe OU fans out there are a little skeptical. Like, okay, I get that he's an Arkansas guy, but they remember what was the guy that I'm can't believe I'm blanking on it now. Went to Harbor, Bray
Walker. Not Bray Walker.
Bray Cook.
Oh my God.
Bray Cook, is that was it?
Yeah,
Bray Cook. Yeah, that's exactly who it is.
Everybody. He seemed to be the guy that he really liked Oklahoma. He was going to come out here. He was invested in was that Patton at the time that was recruiting him, and
yeah, it was.
And in the end, it didn't matter. He chose the local school, and that seems to happen with Arkansas. So why should OU fans not expect the same thing to happen with Byers down the road?
Well, I think anytime, and you brought up Bray. And Bray was one of those guys that Arkansas did offer very early on. I mean, same deal. And Oklahoma was going head-to-head. And I think at that time you had some enthusiasm for it because Arkansas wasn't really, I guess if you want to consider Arkansas on the upswing right now, I mean, that's highly debatable. Then at that time, Arkansas wasn't really there. It was kind of felt like they had kind of hit a lull and weren't really moving in the right direction. In this case, Arkansas feels like they are, especially along the lines where they're starting to produce some NFL guys, but they haven't offered him. And at some point, that becomes personal for these kids. That's, they'll forgive a lot. And you can say, hey, we offered you early and then we didn't talk to you for a month. And kids will kind of overlook that. But when you just flat out haven't offered the in-state guy that a lot of people think is one of the top two players in your home state, that's a tough pill for a lot of kids to swallow. I mean, you look at it from Oklahoma's perspective. If they still hadn't offered Trey Brown or Isaiah Thomas or somebody like that, that door probably closes. So, that's something that I think can be a factor for Oklahoma. And Oklahoma has the nice aspect of offering, hey, we may not be the home state school, but we're really close. You don't have to go 10 hours away to play big-time ball at an Alabama or a Florida State or something like that. You can still stay fairly close to home, get far enough away from your parents to have a little breathing room. And, so there's a pitch they can make, but there's no question. I mean, if Arkansas offers even now, they become an immediate contender. There's no doubt about it.
It's interesting the success Oklahoma has had in this region. We talked about it earlier. I don't know what you would call it, the Ozarks region. You have guys like Blake Bell and Geno Grissom, Justin McKay, even though he ended up transferring, they had success. Dan Tapco, Trey Millard out of Missouri. So this Kansas City camp should be interesting to see what comes out of this region because, like Josh said, Oklahoma provides a local powerhouse where they don't have to go too far from home and still be able to play some blue blood college football.
By the way, youngster, it's called the Midlands.
The Midlands.
Yes, Josh knows what I'm talking about.
It is pretty crazy how
that was the super prep definition. I think super prep and prep star were the ones, and even whatever it was that Bobby Burton and Jeremy Crabtree used to be a part of. But Midlands was the official Kansas, and Oklahoma was even included in that, but Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma.
Those are all Midlands?
Yes.
It's kind of scary that those guys 20 years ago, most of whom are now deemed like crazy people and kind of completely out of their element.
Like Alan Wallace.
Are like, they're still the standard. That's still what we set our terminology by, is by what guys like Max Emfinger set up for us.
Max
I mean, like,
Emfinger
really?
is the craziest person on this
terrifying.
planet. Have you seen how crazy Max Emfinger is now?
I don't know that he's been on my radar since, I don't know, 05, 06,
I think he started like ChristianMingleRecruiting.com or something like that.
That's interesting.
It was really strange.
That would be that needs to be a 30 for 30.
That's a niche.
You really
group.
could make a 30 for 30 on Max Emfinger. Because, I mean, he was the guy that made USA Today's high school All-American team. He alone was responsible for that. And that's why the freaking movie Blindside is so stupid, because of idiot boy in there going, Nick Saban needs his recruiting video right now.
That's him?
No, that's, what's his...
Lemming?
Tom Lemming.
Tom
yeah.
Lemming.
Oh, God. Don't get me started.
Everybody out there, like he's one of those guys you watch and like, that dude's a cootie. Like, you know it.
Well, he's had...
And
how much
he's worse than
plastic
you think
surgery has he had?
It doesn't even get justified in that movie, in the things you see. He is...
Isn't that...
Yeah.
Don't you find that offensive?
Tom Lemming's kind of like a Kardashian, I think.
He's kind of like a recruiting Kardashian. Yeah, he really is. That's
A
good
lemming,
example.
if you will.
All right, moving on. Ceedarian Lamb, we haven't talked about him in a recruiting podcast yet, but committed to Oklahoma, said from the beginning, hey, I'm still going to take official visits. That should have been your first warning sign there. But Josh, just your thoughts on Ceedarian Lamb.
Well, this is a guy that he committed in early December. I went and saw him about 3 weeks before he committed, and he was talking about at that point, hey, I like the Oklahoma offer. I may go up there and check them out. But if LSU offers, I know what I want to do. Well, once he got that LSU offer, at the very least, he was going to take a long look around. Now, like we talked about a little bit off air, he's visited Baylor and A&M in the last week, and I think he's starting to get really involved in earnest in his recruitment. So I think that's going to happen. But everybody I talked to, both, around him and both and on Oklahoma's side of things, I get the impression that Oklahoma still feels they can reel him back in. This isn't something that they're waving a white flag on. They're not saying it's done. And when I talk to people at LSU, I don't think he's a for sure take for them. So I think some of the idea that, well, he'll just pick LSU, I don't think that's as straightforward as it seems. So I get why everyone's concerned, and I get that it's something that people kind of hate about today's age of recruiting. But at the same time, nobody hated it when he committed in December. I mean, you can't have that both ways. When kids are deciding this early, stuff like this is just inevitable. It's gonna happen. And for him, a native Louisiana guy, it's a really strong pull for him to go play for LSU, the home state school. And I think he'll go camp there this summer, and then I think LSU will kind of have an idea of what they want to do with him. If they want to take him, if they want to push for him, if they don't. It's kind of a situation very similar to Cody Ford a couple years ago when he went down and camped at LSU. And LSU just said, we like him, but we think we've got some guys that, that we like a little better. I kind of get the feeling that's where this is going to go because, this is LSU. They have no trouble recruiting wide receivers. And if they identify other guys and can go tell them they're going to be the next Odell Beckham, they're going to land a lot of guys that way. So I think it may be, from kind of what I've gathered, LSU's looking at 3 or 4 receivers, and I would say he's somewhere around 6 or 7. So they're going to have to miss out on some guys. And I think if OU is patient and OU fans, will kind of take their time with this, I think they might end up happy in the end. I
think it's interesting that you point out the conversation about the new age of recruiting and what happens now. And I kind of wonder if these, and I know this is the case in a lot of situations, but these guys, if they're told, commit early, lock up a spot, it's going to be there for you down the road, and then kind of play the game. Or these guys kind of jump into the recruiting before they know what they're getting into. I liked what you said where Lamb was starting to get into his recruiting in earnest, almost as if, okay, well now I understand that it's not just about committing and playing the game. I need to go see these places. I need to realize what I want and what I need. And then that can kind of start to take over throughout the process. But that doesn't mean also that commitment initially isn't still beneficial for you. You'd rather get that commitment early than not. Even though it doesn't mean as much as before, the numbers still point out that early commitment still should help out in the long run overall in the aggregate. So I guess I'm just saying that some people might want to say, early commitments, they're not going to pay attention to any of them anymore. And I say, don't do that. Those still matter. You'd still rather have that guy locked up early than not.
I think the important thing is if in the past, and Josh can tell you this, we've seen it, a kid commits and decommits, and the coaches, they're as big a problem as anything, because they get mad and then they give up on the kid, or don't recruit him the same way anymore, and just feel like that there's no way they're going to get him back. But I don't know, Josh, you're better to speak on this than me, but I get a feeling that this staff isn't going to take that route. Like Dennis Simmons, Cale Gundy, they're guys that will just keep working.
Yeah, see, Carey, that's a great point. It was something that I wasn't sure you were going to say as you started that point, and you're absolutely right on. Like, because I used to get that feeling when I would talk to people, around the staff. They'd say, "Oh man, they're just sick of this, and they hate how this is working, and they don't want to be part of this." Well, when the whole, and I know we're going to talk about this, but as I was talking to some people this week about the whole Aaron Moorhead situation at Texas A&M, I kind of got a feeling of, well, what was his problem? And I almost got the feeling like I empathized with the guy more than some of maybe, the staff and other people that I was talking to, that they just thought, this is part of the game, and this is where this is now. You got to deal with it, and you got to move on. And I think that's just Oklahoma staff getting younger, becoming more in touch with how recruiting works these days. Because like Joe said, these guys commit, and at the time they commit, for Lamb's case to Oklahoma, he'd met OU a couple of times. He'd been around them. He'd probably talked to him on Twitter, probably had 2 or 3 phone conversations. By and large, it's a school and a name at that point in time. That's all there is to that decision. They don't know much about the school. They don't know anything about the academics, what the offense looks like. I mean, they know Baker Mayfield threw for a bunch of yards, but do they have anybody like me already on campus? Have they recruited guys that have skill sets like me? Is there anyone from my area, my back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? They don't have any of those questions answered. They are just looking at a school and a name and comparing it to other schools and other names. And that's how you get these early commitments. But as Joe said, Oklahoma's got 12 commitments right now. I'd be shocked if less than 10 of them end up signing with OU come National Signing Day. I mean, there's going to be some play. There's going to be some movement. That's going to happen. But at the same time, you take the good with the bad, because I'll almost guarantee that those 2 spots will probably be filled by 2 guys that are committed elsewhere right now. That's the way this goes. And that's why you've got to recruit from beginning to end. And once a guy's committed, coaches used to be able to kind of just, lock it down and it's over and it's good. It doesn't work like that anymore. You have to keep recruiting a commitment the same way you're recruiting the 5-star guy that hasn't even been on campus yet.
It feels really weird, this recruiting cycle, too, just in that I guess we've seen it a little bit more going to these RCS camps, and there's been a bigger group of OU guys that have already been committed. But it just feels like this class is a little bit different in that there's true leaders, I guess is the best way to put it, in this class. And when you look at guys like Levi Draper, Justin Broyles, Trey Brown, those types of guys, it seems like maybe guys are a little bit not as, I don't know, I don't want to say that they're going to sign everybody. There's probably going to be a couple guys out of that group that don't end up signing, but maybe it's just a little bit harder when you have that core foundation of guys to that they've built a relationship with to turn your back, I guess, on them before the signing day even comes around.
OU fans have to love Justin Broyles. I mean, that guy is just great, and he's out there recruiting, and he's taking ownership for the recruitment part of the process. He's not just saying, okay, well, I'm going to sign with Oklahoma, my job is done. He says, I'm a member of the Oklahoma football family now. It is my job now to help as whatever I can, and Justin Broyles has this magnanimous personality, and so he's out there kind of helping recruit, leading the Sooner Squad 17 charge. And so I think to Eddie's point, he's kind of people take ownership of the class more so than ever, really. I mean, I think back to guys like Brennan Clay did stuff like that too, but it is kind of rare for this to happen so early, right, Josh?
It is, and something, and it kind of goes into what Eddie said, is we've rarely seen a class like this that was so, not only, with so many numbers in it, but with so many quality players that were going to be at these big elite camps. So that's kind of rare. And then you throw on top of it, a guy like Broyles did something I've never seen before. Because when we talked to him after the camp, I was like, man, you didn't go through many reps. You didn't do a lot. And he goes, man, I'm here to recruit. Like, I mean, and that's just the way he saw that. And he actually reached out to me not too long ago to kind of see what the chances were of him going to the 5-star challenge. And I didn't talk to him about what his goals were, but I have no doubt that Justin Broyles sees that as a chance to go there and be an on-site recruiter. We get to basically be a Chip Viney on hand selling OU to all these guys. And the only thing that's a concern about that is there is a very real chance of, do you push too hard?
Yeah.
Do you push on to guys that don't know you and aren't comfortable with you? I mean, Justin Broyles can push Trey Brown all he wants. He knows that kid. Levi Draper, same deal with Trey, those kind of things. But you have to be real careful. I think fans sometimes fall in love with, he's pushing and he's recruiting all these guys. That can turn out some guys off. You've got to walk a real fine line. And I don't think Justin's done that. I haven't heard that from anybody. I don't want it to, me say, this to come off as me saying he's doing something wrong. I think he's helping Oklahoma almost unanimously.
Yeah,
but
at some point you kind of
it's a question.
You kind of become a Lakers fan. I mean, like, you just talk about Kobe so much and so much that everybody just hates Kobe. So yeah, you have to be careful. I'll tell you one thing I was thinking of is, and this is kind of shows you how far the OU coaching staff has come. And they used to be a lot more old school, but I thought about this week because of the tragedy with Greg Bryant. He was at our first 5-star challenge in Atlanta, and there were a bunch of Notre Dame guys there, and he ended up going to Notre Dame, and then a couple of years after that, Jay Norvell actually talked Dallas Todd into not going to rival stuff because he was afraid that people would turn, people would turn his commitment from Oklahoma to. I can't remember what the big school was that year.
UCLA was making a push.
It was UCLA. We had a bunch of UCLA guys at that camp, and so they got really free. But I don't think coaches would worry about that stuff anymore. But I mean, that was kind of like the olden times of recruiting for those guys.
That was before people were sliding in DMs.
Yeah.
I do feel like kids have, recruits have started to realize the power they have in this situation more so, and it's been in the last few years, even since Dallas Todd's recruitment. I mean, if Jay Norvell tried that now, I think a receiver would say, well, I think I have more power in this situation than you do, so I'm going to do what I want to do.
Well, you know what ended up being stupid about that was the Chicago year, which was Joe Mixon, Micaiah Quick, and it was like a big... there was a big Sooner, well, not big, but a Sooner contingent there. Remember, DeAndre Clark was at that one.
Stephen Parker was up there.
Stephen Parker was up there, yeah.
But there was a lot of OU-UCLA rivalry going on there. There was a lot of skepticism about what UCLA was going to do to OU's class around that time. Remember Joe Mixon? I mean, up until the day he signed, people were talking about UCLA sneaking in on him, and so... I thought
it was up until the second that he announced. I remember being up in the press box with Josh up at the Alamo Bowl, and the UCLA guys were pretty convinced he was going to Los Angeles.
All right, well, moving on a little bit. I don't want to get caught too much in one subject, but Marvin Wilson. We haven't talked about him on a recruiting podcast yet, but Josh, I know you put it out there that official visit was going to happen with Oklahoma, but just kind of your thoughts on Marvin Wilson. I know you're getting ready to talk to him here this week as well, but where you think things are right now with Oklahoma and Marvin Wilson.
Well, I was hearing as of a week, 2 ago that Oklahoma, maybe a month ago, that Oklahoma was having some trouble kind of getting in touch with him, that he wasn't quite getting back to them the way a guy will. And I think that's something that gets lost, is you can read a lot of stuff into that. I know I do. When I can get a recruit to get back to me after I tell them, hey, man, I'm Josh with the OU site for Rivals, that's usually a pretty good indicator, okay? That usually says something about it. But when it's a coach, that's glaring. If you're not contacting the coach, your level of interest just isn't there. Over the last few weeks, I've been told that's really changed. It's starting to turn around. He's getting in touch, from what I understand, talking a lot to Calvin Thibodeau, the new defensive line coach. I think it's just taken Oklahoma time. Obviously, Thibodeau being a late arrival, it's crazy when you think about it that Marvin Wilson was offered 2 defensive line coaches ago. I mean, that's just how much, how early he was recruited and how much has changed for OU in the time. So Thibodeau's had to play some catch-up. He's going to show up for basically the weekend of OU's camp, the first weekend in June, 4th through the 6th. And I think he'll just be there for, the day. I think he'll drive up the 4th, I think is what he told me. It's huge for Oklahoma. I mean, this is their chance to make sure he gets back sometime this fall, either for an official visit or just coming to a game or something along those lines. If this goes well, then you have a chance to make a move. It kind of reminds me of the story it was in a USA Today article years ago, and we'll leave the author out because that'll take us all into a different place, about Jamarcus McFarland when his mom was talking about going to OU for a visit, and they weren't really that serious about Oklahoma at that point in time. And Jackie Shipp made such an impression on Jamarcus's mother that they said, okay, we're going to come back and we're going to take another trip. That's kind of what this is for Oklahoma. They get a big chance here to make an impression on Marvin. Now, he won't be up there with his mother or his family. It's just going to be him and kind of one of his coaches at Episcopal. But at the same time, Oklahoma needs to hit a home run here. I don't know what they've got planned. I don't know how they're going to do it because obviously they still have to juggle the camp and all that's going along with that. And I don't think Marvin will work out, but if he does, all the better. So, like I said, it's just a big chance for Oklahoma. I don't think it means anything until he leaves that campus and we know where things are. Because if it's just okay, I would bet he never comes back. But if it goes really well, I think they got a chance.
I would imagine Devontae Lampkin has to play a big role in that weekend.
You would think. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, Oklahoma now has some presence in Houston. They're not the kind of foreign entity they used to be. Like, I remember when Brandon Williams from Berkshire chose Oklahoma. It surprised a lot of people because Oklahoma just didn't recruit much in Houston. But this is a chance for them not only to just land a good player in Houston, but this is the kind of guy that 2 or 3 years down the road, kids from Houston are saying, I want to play with Marvin Wilson.
And Matthew Romar also on that defensive line from the
that's
Houston
a good
area will
point.
help out too. So
Yeah, Matt Diamond close by.
yeah, so I think to Josh's point, I think Oklahoma needs to give him a sense of to show him something he didn't think he would see before. Oh man, I didn't think I would see that. I didn't think I would feel this. But you don't want to show him everything, right? You don't want to have him leaving feeling like, okay, I kind of get this place, and then he doesn't want to come back. You kind of want to show him something to make him, oh man, I hadn't thought about OU this way, and then you get those 3 guys in there to give him that at-home feel. That's kind of the recipe you want, the excitement and the comfort together, right?
I think there's a benefit there too that Oklahoma has right now. You mentioned Calvin Thibodeau, but Oklahoma's been. You mentioned this. He was recruited 2 coaches ago. This is Calvin Thibodeau's dream job. He's not going anywhere. He doesn't have to worry about stability for his position coach. And you've also got Jamarcus McFarland as graduate assistant right now on the staff.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, another guy that was a 5-star guy, defensive lineman coming out of high school can really help, be another voice, another sales job for that.
Oh, I mean, you're absolutely right. And you talk about it. I mean, Marvin's one of those guys that I guarantee he's got Bob Stoops' cell phone number. He's got, like anybody on that staff he wants to call, OU will make the time to talk to him. So I think that, and to me, Joe kind of hit on it. For me, if I'm there, I'm making sure he's around guys like Kyler Murray, guys, Joe Mixon, guys that not only have a bunch of energy and that are going to really give him a good pitch, but at the same time can talk about other schools that are recruiting him because, Mixon could have gone anywhere. Kyler did go somewhere else. I mean, so you can kind of look through those things. And at the same time, you're not making it kind of a rote thing. Well, here's our academic facilities and here's this. You're making it more about fun and, hey, I want to go back there and have a good time. So, hey, come back to the Ohio State game and after, and you get, Joe Mixon telling him after we win by 3 touchdowns, man, you're going to go to some parties. We're going to do all the right stuff. So you make it more about being fun and energetic. And then once you get him on campus for a weekend, then you can hit, okay, this is where we are with our depth chart. This is all the stuff we've got for you here. But, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I would leave it a lot to the players, especially since the players can now be around that camp and work. So while Thibodeau's out there working with the campers, he can be talking to Jamarcus McFarland and, current players, Marquise Overton, Matt Romar, Matt Diamond, go down that list. And that's what I would really be focused on with this trip.
Somebody that we haven't talked to you about, Josh, is Tre Sermon, a 4-star out of Marietta, Georgia, Sprayberry High School. Just kind of the idea of what that means to Oklahoma? I know you hit on it in the breakdown right after he committed, but OU going into SEC territory, into Georgia, where they really haven't had that much success. What does that mean, and how big of a get was that for Boulware and being able to get a guy in Tre Sermon?
Well, I mean, to put it in perspective, the last time that OU landed any running back in the state of Georgia was Tashard Choice. I mean, that tells people how unprecedented this is. It just doesn't happen. And so for Oklahoma to go in and get a guy that was far more highly recruited than Choice was, and to do so at a time, you know, when Choice came in, Oklahoma was maybe the team in college football that was consistently playing for national championships year in and year out. So to go and do this when he's got offers from Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and Florida, I mean, and all over the SEC and really all over the country, that's a huge win for Oklahoma. And I think it's even more interesting when you look at it from the perspective of, I think Oklahoma put a little pressure on him and said, hey, you know, if you don't do this, we might have to move in another direction, or we're going to have to make some more offers and find a guy who does want to be in place, because we might have 2 running back openings and we need to fill at least one of them as quickly as possible. So it's not just about, oh, yeah, they worked this kid hard, but they showed, you know, that they have enough cachet to kind of push a guy that maybe isn't in their home base toward a commitment.
Yeah, and if you look at after this year, Josh, you have Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, who could very likely both go pro. And then you're looking at, for the 2017 season, hoping, I guess, Rodney Anderson is ready to take the role. Marcelius Sutton coming in. I don't know if Abdul Adams is the guy. There's a role, there's a space here for someone to come in and have an immediate impact at that position, following the footsteps of guys like Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, which have elevated the status of the Oklahoma running back position, which was already very highly thought of. So Oklahoma had a lot to sell to Sermon, and so I think OU fans would be probably a little excited to hear that they flexed their muscle a little bit. Maybe that's the wrong word for it, but pushed a kid, played their hand the way they needed to play it to get somebody locked down. And we just talked about the guy that I think has the closest comparison to style of play in Joe Mixon. And I know that's a lofty comparison for a former 5-star, but those guys are about the same size, 6'2", 220 pounds, and who have agility, who move their feet in ways that guys that size don't normally move their feet. Now, Joe's a little better catching the ball in the backfield, but there aren't guys that catch the ball in the backfield like Joe Mixon very often. So, and Tre is capable of doing that in Lincoln Riley's offense. So I think there is a lot of potential there for Tre Sermon if he can come back from that injury like he was before.
Well, one of the things that is going to be big is, OU coaches getting back out on the road for satellite camps. And that's something that we've gone down to. We've seen it, pay benefits for them. It was never as big as it was made out to be by, the SEC and the Big Ten and the media. We're talking about camps that maybe 20 prospects showed up at, and that would be on a good day. So, like last year, it was big for Lincoln Riley just to be able to work out Chris Robinson and Sean Robinson on the same day.
Yeah.
But camps coming up, Josh, what can you kind of tell us about who they're working with, how that's going to go, what you expect moving forward there for Oklahoma?
Well, they're going to kind of continue with Sam Houston State, which I think is a great fit because Sam Houston State has enough pull, being a big-time D2 program, to pull in quality guys that maybe, Oklahoma hasn't seen. And if nothing else, they're good enough players to push the 3 or 4 guys at any OU camp that OU is targeting. They can kind of get a better feel for them. Like last year, getting a chance to see Jamon Osborne in Houston or Marvin Wilson at Houston. Those were the 2 real guys at that camp. And then I know you guys in Dallas saw, guys like Charleston Rambo, Chris Robinson, Sean Robinson, you mentioned as well, Robert Barnes being another one. So, it's not just about those guys, being, there need to be 50 guys. You only got 2 hours. There's only so much you can do. And really, let's be real about it. It's not they knew Charleston Rambo was a good player. They had seen Chris Robinson. They knew he was a good player. It's about those kids coming out, showing they're interested, and then Oklahoma being able to make up their mind and spend 2 hours basically talking to Chris Robinson about his family and what he wants out of the recruiting process. All those things they can just sit there and cover. And I think Oklahoma and any other major program gets that advantage. And that's what these things are about from a major program standpoint. That's what they want to do. And for Oklahoma to get this opportunity to go do it again around the state, like I said, with Sam Houston State, they're going to find some more guys. And, maybe they will find one or two that they don't know that well. But it's like we talked about in the last podcast. That's going to be 2018, 2019 guys, and they get to start building those inroads early on.
And it looks like it'll be kind of the same schedule as last year, won't it? Mesquite, South Grand Prairie, and then back down to
down in
Elite.
Houston.
Is that right, Josh?
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to look up the dates here. But it's all it should be a very similar format. I'm sure that they've done the Houston camp the last 2 or 3 years at the same complex, kind of over in A-Leaf on the east side. On the west side of Houston,
where they they sealed the deal with one John Humphrey back in the day before.
Absolutely, that's a perfect example that I dropped the ball on.
I'm all for these kids having more opportunities for exposure. I think we all are, right? It's not just the OU kids. There are other kids out there that are going to go out, and OU might not think, oh, that's not a guy for me, but Bob has connections all over the country. He could talk to his brother at Kentucky. He can say to somebody else, I saw this guy down here. He wasn't good. He wasn't right for us, but I think you can have a look at him. And so it's kind of I'm glad these things are back. I think we all are, that now there's more opportunities for these guys to get seen and to have all that work that they put into the sport now get seen and have some exposure.
Look, I'm not trying to be like athletes for humanity here, because it's coaches do take advantage of being able to do that. But what is cool from Oklahoma's perspective, I'm sure, is like last year, I think BYU was there. Was Rutgers there last year?
UCLA was
a couple years ago. UCLA was, but they get their prospect. Like BYU brought a quarterback out to work out for them, and you can see him versus Chris Robinson. You can see really good players, and you can tell the difference between them. I'm sure the BYU coaches were like, damn, this kid's not as good as the Chris Robinson kid, and not as good as that Sean Robinson kid, but it's their guy and they can work it. But it gives you a chance not just to catch a diamond in the rough, but to really see, okay, we think this kid is elite, but when you see him up against another Division I prospect, then you can kind of know he's elite.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like what we were talking about a little off air with Bray Walker. And hopefully he's somebody who we've seen in person a few times live in games, but you really aren't sure of what you're seeing until you see them go up against other elite competition that they'll be facing in college. And if you don't see that, it's true to have a real evaluation. What is somebody supposed to take away from watching Bray Walker, who's 6'7", 300 pounds, trying to block a guy who's 6'1", 220 pounds? There's not much to be taken away from that. So these camps do provide that opportunity.
The Sam Houston football camps will be with Oregon, Oklahoma, UCLA, and BYU. June 11th, they'll start out at Mesquite at 8 a.m. and then go to Grand Prairie at 3 p.m., same schedule as last year, and then on down to Elif ISD the next day in Houston on June 12th, and then Sam Houston, I guess, will have their own camp at Sam Houston in Huntsville on July 24th.
I'm trying to figure out the wisdom or the play or whatever of Baylor and Michigan combining to get, like, what is Art Browse always has some angle that he's playing. Like, what angle is he playing? Is he playing if we don't get him, we want to get him out of this area so we don't have to compete against
Send him to the Big Ten?
Yes. I don't quite get how that's a positive for Baylor.
With Art Browse, I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Harbaugh goes missing after that weekend.
I bet Jim Harbaugh could survive out in the swamps on
he's going to be on
and stuff.
He will be on Naked and Afraid in less than a year.
He's going to Australia for a camp.
That's true.
But I thought about this morning. That's really not. It's kind of like $1 Million Arm. There's so many rugby players out there that might not be a bad idea, Josh.
The one I love is Samoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Genius.
Yeah, that is.
I'm looking at Michigan satellite camps right now. I think they have I guess there's over 20. There's 2 in Alabama, 4 in California, 1 in Connecticut, 1 in Georgia, 3 in Florida, 1 in Kansas, 11 in Michigan, 1 in Missouri, 1 in Mississippi, 2 in New Jersey.
He's having one 30 miles away from Ann Arbor.
Is he really?
Yes.
It's just unbelievable. 3 in Texas, 1 in Hawaii, 1 in Samoa, Australia. That's taking it overboard in
Can
my
I just
opinion.
say Jim Harbaugh doesn't seem like a lot of fun? I mean,
I would not want to work for that man.
There's situations where I guess I'd like to be around him, like a survival thing. If we're stranded somewhere, I guarantee he'd be great. If we had to get in a fight, I bet you that guy would go 10 rounds. But, I mean, hanging out with that guy must be miserable. I mean, he cannot have any fun.
Doesn't seem to have a personality at all.
You know, the thing about it, and everybody's going to freak out about, oh, this is what we worried about. You know, he's going to have 30 satellite camps, blah, blah. He'll stop that. You're not going to keep a staff together doing 30 satellite camps a summer. It's not going to happen. He'll do this one. It'll be a big deal, and I guarantee you next year it'll be half as many, if that. It'll calm down. I think right now the satellite camps is such a buzzy topic that he's taking advantage of it. I mean, say whatever you will about the guy, not much fun, blah, blah, blah. He understands how to work public perception, and that's maybe as much as any gift he has. He really gets that kind of stuff. Like the camp, the sleepover at one of the recruits' houses, or, climbing in the tree, with one of them, all this crazy stuff. But it gets attention. It gets people paying attention. And now with probably the exception of Nick Saban, he's probably the most famous coach in college football.
But I think it also highlights why he got into the troubles he did with San Francisco, because he's not living in reality. You cannot ask college assistants to work that much. I mean, it's impossible. They will die. I mean, it's not literally die, but they won't want to work for you anymore. They won't be productive. I mean, coaches have as hard a jobs as they've ever had, and now he's taking it up to another level. Like, who the hell wants to stay there? I mean, if people are going to be sending out their resumes trying to get out of there after this summer's over.
Unless he has a staff full of young Bill Snyders ready to just stay up all night watching film. I have no idea how you keep that up. Although coaches are a different breed. Those guys are wired a little differently.
Yeah. I mean, Brent Venables would survive that, I know.
Well, his son's on the staff, so he's got at least one safe position. But these are, they're just like anybody else. They got young kids and wives that want them home and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's all of that stuff to consider. What I can't imagine is, like, being one of the Michigan reporters. Like, how, honey, I have to go to Australia for 3 days, like.
Well, that's when you take the wife with you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but
I'm not paying for that, though.
I'd say, how, guys, we all know what we're making, and I don't know how I could possibly cover half of the camps that he's doing around the country.
No. I mean, it would. There's no way. I'm just trying to think through my head, like, how could we do that? There's no way we could.
No.
All right, Joe, I know we're running a little short on time. Some hoops recruiting news, a new commit, and anything that we want to touch on there?
Yeah, I'll just real quick. Oklahoma just got a commitment for their 2016 class, which we thought they might late add somebody. They didn't get Marquise Bolden, the 5-star center, but they added Jordan Shepard, who is a combo guard from North Carolina. He was really flying under the radar, and I'm told by sources that the coaches tried to keep it that way. They wanted to get him on campus, not let a lot of people know he was here, and try to get him locked up and signed, which they did do. He left campus, signed, and committed to Oklahoma, and they like him a lot. They think he's somebody who could be an Isaiah Cousins type, play both the 1 and the 2 at 6'3", 6'4", with a lot of length and athleticism. He might not come in and contribute right away. They have a lot of depth at the shooting guard position, but he does come in and give you a guy that can play the backup point if Darian Strong struggles. He can come in and play defense if Rashard Odoms or some of those other guys, young guys, Christian James, although Christian James is a fabulous defender. I don't see him struggling there, but he's someone who comes in, brings depth immediately, and they like him a lot. Outside of that, into 2017, Oklahoma has about as active of a recruiting and basketball situations as they've had since Jeff Capel was here. And they have multiple 5-stars they're in on. They have guys like Trae Young from Norman North, which you all probably know about. Trayvon Duval from Dallas, another 5-star point guard that's visited Oklahoma. And recently they just offered the number 1 player in the country, DeAndre Ayton, who's a 7-foot, 250-pound guy from the Bahamas. And so now you can see that Oklahoma connection already there because he's a fan of Buddy Hield. He was a fan of OU during last year. OU takes their time with these offers. As I've said before, they make sure there's nobody sticking their hand out. There's no red flags on the court or off of it. And they kind of do their homework and vet, and they finally decided that DeAndre Ayton is somebody that they were willing to make that offer for and take that chance on. And people think that Oklahoma has a very real chance here at getting the number 1 player in the country, which is exciting coming off of a Final Four bid and having a Wooden Award winner. So a lot of buzz right now in Norman recruiting circles. And I'm also hearing that Trae Young and Oklahoma, they are starting to really think that they are the leader there and that they are in good position to hold on. So
wow.
He will have guys coming from Kentucky and Duke and Kansas forever. That will never stop. But at least Oklahoma thinks they have the high ground right now.
It's pretty amazing what they're going to bring in that 2016 class when you consider that Austin Grandstaff's already on campus. Matt Freeman went through the whole him and Grandstaff, I guess, went through the whole NCAA tournament with that kind of, I guess, just experience being around it probably helps a little bit.
Yeah, and they also add Christian Doolittle, who's in the Rivals 150.
Yeah.
Oh crud! I'm blanking on Cameron McGusty.
Yeah, McGusty.
Another top 100 kid. So this is, and you touched on him. I think Matt Freeman might be the biggest get out of that class from New Zealand. He's a 6'10", 6'11" power forward who can shoot the three very consistently. We'd seen him at practice and stuff, and Eddie's been there more than I have. You can see that guy's got some great shooting touch at that height. They think he's going to bring a new dimension to the offense next year.
Well, and not to mention Darian Strong, who's one of the top-rated JUCO guards that will probably come in and give a little bit more aid to Jordan Woodard.
I would say Darian Strong might come in and have a very Sam Groomsian type career, which is nothing to sneeze at. I think he can.
You need that guy.
You need that guy. You need an experienced backup point guard, and he comes in and brings that. Look at the Thunder right now. They don't have that. I mean, Randy Foy's kind of played poorly, and they basically have to leave Westbrook out there. You need that strong kind of backup point guard presence, and I think Darian Strong's that guy.
Well, it's good stuff. And Josh, appreciate you joining us as well for another edition of the Unofficial 40. Anything that we've left out there that you wanted to jump in with before we get out of here?
Well, just so that I can say that I'm the well-rounded guy that I, aspire to be like you all. I kind of was thinking about this. Trae Young, Oklahoma lands him. Where does he figure into like the biggest in-state recruits for Oklahoma? I mean, he's got to be up there with like the Ryan Humphreys, right? I mean, obviously Humphrey didn't end up at Oklahoma immediately, but I mean that it's got to be on that kind of level as far as importance, right?
Well, Blake Griffin, number one.
Of course,
nobody's gonna.
Now Wayman.
Well, yeah, Wayman.
Blake Griffin and Wayman are two good ones. D'Angelo Alexander from Midwest City back in the day is another good guy.
But he wasn't to the level of like a Blake.
Yeah, they have a history of not getting those guys out of Oklahoma. What was that? Sheldon Williams went to Duke. What was the guy?
C.J. Henry went to Kansas.
C.J. Henry. J.R. Giddens went to Kansas.
Xavier Henry
went to Kansas.
And C.J. Henry went to Major League Baseball. I'm blanking out on that.
C.J. Henry
still can't hit a curveball.
I'm a 1-for-1 all time against C.J. Henry, just so you know. That's beside the point. Trae Young, to your point, Josh, is the highest ranked recruit from Oklahoma since Xavier Henry 6 years ago, or I think it's actually longer than that. Might have been 7 years ago. This is a big deal for Oklahoma if they land Trae Young. He is a Steph Curry type of player. He is an unbelievable shooter from deep. He can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot off the catch. He can shoot when he doesn't exactly have the right kind of grip. If he's off balance, he's that good of a shooter, and it's kind of where the game is evolving to. And I think it's something that Oklahoma fans have kind of always wanted, that unbelievable sharpshooter, which I guess Buddy Hield brought last year, but that was something he had to work on for a long time. Trey's a much more naturally gifted shooter than Buddy ever was.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40. For Josh McQuistion, Eddie Radosevich, and Joe Duvall, I am Carey Murdoch, and we'll be back again next week with another team podcast for you. We've got some other special stuff coming up. We're going to have 3 different podcasts going here starting tomorrow. We're going to have a special podcast that I'm going to be doing on my own. Get away from these jerkwads.
Good call.
And do something on my own, but just interviewing people one-on-one. So looking forward to starting to get some of those out there as well. And lots of good stuff coming up on the website. Like we said, we'll be in Kansas City this weekend for the Rivals Camp, Series. We've got the 5-Star Challenge coming up in June as well, and all the satellite camps coming up, and OU's own camp to cover as well. So lots of stuff coming to you throughout the summer. Never an off season here at Soonerscoop.com. So thanks for listening. We'll be back next time, and we'll see you then.